Welcome to Code Catch Up. In this video, we're going to be going over a feature in Ruby 2.4 called binding.irb. And what that does is it allows you to have a debugger at a certain point in time in your code. So in the execution, you can place a debugger and it will bring up an interactive console or a REPL for you to then debug around in your code. This may sound familiar if you were a Ruby developer, because there's existing gems to do this, but they are third-party gems, and the most common one is prior, which is very, very useful, and there's also bybug, which is generally bundled with Rails by default. So there's two options you get there, but sometimes you just don't need those, and they are quite heavy-handed in comparison to something that's already included in the language itself. So this is a good light alternative if you don't want to have the external dependencies, if you're just doing basic debugging. Now, in saying that, you do get a bit more functionality with pry and bybug than you do with binding.irb, but it'll certainly get you a long way without requiring those dependencies. So what I've got here is a very simple greeting.rb file as an example. Very basic code. There's some obvious things here, but just to kind of demonstrate the purposes of what binding.irb can do, we're going to run that here in this file. So let's open up this file. You see there's a class of greeting, the class method of say, which takes a greeting, and it has a count, which we're going to loop through the count X amount of times and output the greeting, the count. So essentially, if we want a greeting of hello world 10 times, we put in the count of 10 and it output hello world 10 times. I've added in an index here just so you can see the number of times it's been output, as well as I'll do some debugging within that as well. So what we're going to do is just run this code, we'll execute it and make sure that everything kind of works as we expect. Say hello, and we'll do 2. There we go, hello world twice, perfect. Now if we do 1, okay, well now it's not outputting once, we expected to output once. What about a default? It still doesn't work. So what I'm going to do is go back into the code at the very start of the execution, binding.irb, and there is a return here, so I want to just make sure that return's not misfunctioning, or malfunctioning rather. So these two binding.irbs are now in place. So now if we go back into our code, and we'll just leave it with the default. Let's check the count. So the count's there, that's fine, so it definitely should be outputting once. I can see that we've just output nil and we've been returned back to our normal prompt. So it seems like there's been an early return. So if I exit out of that, you can see, yes, so I've got the count is equal to 1. So what we should have here is nil instead. So if it's nil, that it outputs nothing. But if there is any kind of value, then it should then output that value. Greeting.say hello. We get once, we do 1, we do 2, we could even do 10. Looks great. If I put in nil, we get nil. So that works perfectly. So we've just been able to use this debugger to fix a very small problem in our code, but we can also do that in blocks. So in here, I'm going to put a binding.irb, and this will execute every single time that block is run, so, or every iteration of that block. So it should hit it twice, so we've hit it once here now, so I can check the index, it should be 0. If I continue on, I check the index again, it should be 1, continue on, it'll output. So there we go, so it's outputting things as we need, and as you can see in the code here, it's when I've done the execution, it's output the puts, and it's stopped at the breakpoint again. I can check the index, I've exited out, it's run the final bit of code there for me. So this is quite a handy method or bit of functionality to have in the language itself by default, and it certainly can replace the requirement of a third-party gem. But I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Have you found it more useful than prior? Are you going to replace it as your daily driver for debugging? I'd love to know. Or are there any other Ruby 2.4 features you'd like to know about? You can leave a comment in the comments section below. But other than that, we'll catch you in the next video.